I'm Teresa Wright, and welcome to Keep Monterey County Moving. And today we're talking about Highway 68, that portion of the highway that we travel or ride on between Monterey and Salinas. And if you've been on that road, you know that there are times of the day that it's really congested. And so today what we want to do is to talk about that and what can we do to make improvements. And we're doing that through the Scenic Highway 68 Corridor Study. So I want to welcome my guests who are here because they're going to be able to explain what's going on in that study and how we're going to make improvements. So let me introduce my guests. First of all, Grant Leonard, who is with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County, one of my colleagues. And then Kendall Flint. Kendall, you're working with us on this project, and you are with Regional Government Services. So yes. Thank you both for being here. And Grant, I'm going to start with you, and let's talk about that highway. What is it that we're trying to do? And
sure. Thanks for having us, Teresa. And to everyone out there in TV land, if you've driven Highway 68, you probably have a story about what needs to be fixed. And certainly we know that here in the transportation business that it's congested, and it's a rural two-lane highway, and it's also the main way between Salinas and Monterey. But it's not just a way for commuters. There are a lot of people who live along the corridor. There are schools along the corridor. There's a business park and an airport and a world-renowned racetrack at Laguna Seca and the SPCA for locals who want to go out there and visit the animals. So it's a complicated highway. There's a lot going on. And what we're trying to do here is look at what we can do to improve the highway over the next 20, 30 years for congestion, relieving congestion, making it safer, reducing the number of collisions, but also, and this is interesting, improving connectivity for wildlife who want to cross between the mountains and the Fort Ord National Monument.
now I'm going to get into the study, but that's something that addresses the holistic part. And Kendall, I certainly want you to weigh in on this. We have a graphic that I'm going to put up because part of this study is that you want it to take a holistic look at that whole corridor. So if we can have the director put up the holistic analysis, and will you two kind of weigh in? You see it on the screen there, and this goes to your point, Grant. So what is it? Why holistic? What does that mean exactly? Either one of you.
Sure. Well, it's essentially a fancy word for our master plan for the highway. So if you think of cities, they have a master plan, how they're going to improve housing and transportation and parks. And this is a master plan for the highways, how we're going to improve it for the folks who live there, who choose to ride it on bicycle, folks who come in as tourists to Laguna Seca or the Monterey Peninsula, and of course for those commuters who go back and forth. Also, there's the environmental point of view. This study was funded through a Caltrans sustainability grant, and part of the grant required that we look at improving it for wildlife, because since Fort Ord was designated a national monument, the amount of wildlife in the area has increased, and that wildlife crosses from the monument to the mountains on the other side of Highway 68.
So can we talk about the safety and that particular component? Kendall, can you weigh in? Because somebody, listening
well,
goes, well,
it's funny. It's I think we all would agree that, we love the wildlife. We want to preserve the wildlife. We want to make sure that they are happy and healthy and thriving. But the bottom line is that when wildlife connects with vehicular traffic, with cars, it ends badly for everyone. It doesn't bode well for the animal, and it also can cause accidents and fatalities for people swerving. So one of the ideas with the study is really to look at the patterns that animals use crossing back and forth. What's really interesting is one of the partners on our team set up all these cameras throughout the corridor. So in fact, they're available on our website, which is sr68sceniccorridor.com, and you can go see images of deer and mountain lions and other little critters going in and out. And what you'll notice on that is actually there's quite a lot and quite a thriving group of them. Now, the wildlife connectivity portion of this program has identified 10 separate projects within the study that show ways you can improve that connectivity and improve safety. And usually that's by doing underpasses which allow the animals to cross underneath the roadway as opposed to on top of it. And you build little barriers and whatnot to make sure they can get through and they can see to the other side. When you don't have that ability, that's when you start seeing some more damage. Now, the wildlife is one part of it, but as Grant said, we also have bicyclists. We have people that are traveling, that are delivering goods and services, businesses that are going through there. And then you have your regular commuters. So looking at each of those different user types, including the animals, and trying to determine what's the best and safest way to move them through the corridor is really the point of the study. And it's a two-parter where you've got the I would say the technical, which is the actual math and numbers, the quantitative data that illustrate, and then we have a robust qualitative piece of that, which is just what people say, like, I hate that road, or I love that road. It's always crowded at 4 o'clock. You know, eastbound is fine, westbound is killing me, depending on who it is.
So explain what your role is in this process.
So
in the study.
we're managing the outreach process for this program. And, you know, we do a lot of work with TAMC and other agencies, and land planners and transportation planners tend to use a lot of acronyms, like TAMC. So one thing we do is try to make this understandable for members of the public. And so our role at the beginning with this is really to, both through the website and through community meetings and workshops, help people understand what we're talking about and what the question is. So for example, we had the entire corridor laid out from end to end, and in the beginning we asked people to go online and tell us specifically where there were areas that there were problems.
Okay,
where
and
there,
we have a map.
Yeah,
so while you're talking
yeah.
about that, I'm going to ask them to put the map up. We have that
Yep.
where people gave like location
Specific comments.
along the highway there. So as the director gets that up, tell them what, you know.
Well, some of them were what we call location-specific comments. So they would
Yes.
talk about a specific intersection. I see he's got it now. A specific intersection or a stretch of road that either had bad visibility or was more inclined to be a site for roadkill kind of situations.
Right.
And when you look at this, you can see we got a very robust number of comments. Lots of people
So
took the
all
time
those
to tell us.
dots represent a comment from
Every
the public.
single one of them. And what was interesting about that is, while some of them, you know, we all have our perceptions when we're behind the wheel about what's safe, what is not safe,
Right.
where's good, where's bad. But when you look at this and then you marry it with the data that was received from the traffic cams and from other things, you see that they start to match up. And that helped the study team identify those specific areas along the corridor that would be best suited for further study and for an approach to try to fix that.
Right.
So in the course of taking all this in, you can see graphics, which I believe are also in that presentation, that lay over the public comment with the technical data in terms of safety and environmental review, all this, and then you see those points, which actually came down to 11 intersections along the corridor that are being explored for improvement, and sort of determining what's the best approach on that to make them better.
Right. And as you're talking, he put up the map that goes back to the connectivity, sort of illustrating the point of why it's so important, this particular component. When you explain that to the general public, they get it, right? And initially, I think there might be some questioning about, well, why would we be concerned about that particular component? But they get it as soon as you start talking about it and realize it is a safety issue for everybody.
Absolutely. And this is an issue that they've been dealing with in states like Utah and Montana and Alaska for decades, but it's becoming more and more common in California. And even in our area, Highway 17 is getting 2 new wildlife undercrossings. Highway 101 through Morgan Hill is looking at wildlife undercrossings, as well as highways up in Napa and Sonoma counties.
Right.
So really, Monterey County is just starting to catch up to what other counties have already been doing.
So, well, like Kendall, if we go to the website, this is some of the data that's being collected right now. So, for example, one of you can talk about this picture that's up here on the screen.
Absolutely. This is one of our favorite shots. It shows a mother deer, and in the background, in the shadow, there's a fawn who's crossing underneath San Venancio Bridge. And this is early in last winter, before it got really rainy and really flooded. And they're doing what animals do best, which is go underneath the roadway by following existing water paths, so creeks and streams and rivers. And this is the same area, but during the dry season, with a bobcat mother and a bobcat kitten. And this is where they want to be. They don't want to be on the road. So if we could find a way to improve these existing culverts and drainage areas like this one, we can get more animals off of the roadway, and we won't have those type of collisions that Kendall mentioned.
Right.
And this is an example of that from Colorado. And it's a very similar type of highway to Highway 68.
And so, if the director can put that up back up for just a second, it's at 10 locations for improvements. Kendall, you mentioned that.
Yes.
So no matter what changes are made,
These 10 are programmed for whatever corridor option, corridor alignment, I'm sorry, not alignment, whatever corridor approach is preferred by the public and by the TAMC board. So these will go, in terms of improvements, they're approximately $12 million worth of investments, and they are throughout the project area, so they're not concentrated in just one place or the other. But the nice thing about that is that not only does I say they make it better for the wildlife, but it also helps in the improvement on not only aesthetics but safety for making this a better corridor, a more safer corridor, both for the passenger, the driver, and of course for the animals.
Okay, so let's go back to the process, this whole public outreach process. You've been meeting, you've been doing presentations, there are virtual workshops, and you're getting all of this information from the public. And then what are you doing with it from there?
Great question. Well, I'm going to back up just a little bit, because when you have the initial study, or the initial workshops were basically show us where the problems are. And then we did the technical analysis that quantified that and either substantiated it and said, yes, that's correct, or no, that's not correct. So we have these intersections. So then the idea is you take a look and say, all right, what approach are we going to use to improve this? And there are different areas that we measure the success of the improvement. One of them would be safety. That's predominantly the most popular one. Another one is reducing emissions, gas emissions. If you've ever driven a car, you know that when you start and stop, it's not only a pain for you, but it's actually bad for the environment. And then there's the amount of time vehicle mile traveled, the amount of time you spend on the road. So there are a number of these different things. And there's an intersection control evaluation slide that I don't know if he's got that handy, but what's great about that is it shows the different intersections in the study area, and then it looks at different approaches to making the traffic move more efficiently. So when you see here, it's the 68, you know, from Jocelyn to Olmsted, all these different places. And then we have safety, delay, the amount of time you spend on the road, the emissions, of course, the cost, and then operations and maintenance, and a benefit cost. So all of these things in the course of the study were weighed together. And right now we're in the phase where we've come up with some approaches, and we're asking the public to weigh in on which one is their preferred alternative for fixing this problem.
Okay. So if I'm looking at this graphic right now, and I see the green, what looks like circles, I see the blue with the traffic signals in there, and then what does that indicate? Like, what are those? What's that?
The green are for roundabouts, and the little blue things you can see are traffic signals. And so with a study like this, and also since we are talking about a scenic corridor, the idea is not to turn it into an 8-lane freeway that goes from end to end. It is a scenic corridor. We're going through neighborhoods. So the idea is to try to move traffic as efficiently as possible. So when you look at each of these different evaluation tools, we ran a series of models to determine, with not only today's traffic counts, which is about 25 to 30,000 vehicles a day, but what that might look like in 10, 15, 20 years. And it's expected to go up somewhere around 10, 15%, not much more than that because we're kind of at capacity. But these are the different types of things that should be considered in terms of how to fix it. So for example, safety, with roundabouts, from a safety standpoint, they are predominantly much safer than an intersection. And the reason for that, there's also a really good slide that illustrates this. But in a roundabout, you come in, you're continuing to move, but you're going in a circle. There you go. So when you're going to have a potential for an accident, even with a bicyclist or a pedestrian, there are only a few places in that roundabout that you can actually have an impact, and there's no T impacts. If you look on the right there, and I think if you've ever been in an accident, you might have experienced this, but in a regular traditional intersection, there are a number of ways that you could get hit or hit someone else in traffic. So when you look at the roundabouts from a safety standpoint, and then also from delay, they tend to keep things moving in a consistent manner, whereas signals can start, stop, and they can be timed. You've also got issues with emissions, again, because you're not ever stopping. That makes the emissions go down. Now, where roundabouts differ from intersections is that roundabouts initially are more expensive to put in,